Welcome to another video. Oh, don't give me this bullshit right when I start recording. Everything's gonna go to shit. Come on. Come on. Dude, this is so annoying. I watched Football Life by John Riggins. Well, not by John Riggins, but about John Riggins. John Riggins was aka named Diesel back in the 80s, 90s when Washington won a few Super Bowls. It's a long time ago. But yeah, no, we're gonna watch a Football Life on John Riggins, Diesel, one of my favorite running backs that's ever played for Washington. I do like Brian Robinson currently right now, but let's watch some Diesel. If it'll work. Oh, I just put it in pause it. Please tell me I just put it in pause it.
They called him the Diesel.
The Diesel.
Now, he's clearing some space at his house, and he's firing up that diesel one more time.
Crank up that diesel. Let's go, diesel.
I love these. These are such great. Like I love these. These are so awesome. Dude was wild. Credits, dude was wild for when he played it.
Riggins is wearing him down.
That's right, he's starting to run.
When he had immense speed for his size. He's a bigger He's a bigger guy.
Yeah, he's gonna give you a little right is right.
Dude, that's like one card I wish we had in Madden. I wish, man. Give us the Diesel card in Madden.
He wanted it, he got it, and he deserved it.
The work is done. Everything's in order. Finally, after over 60 years, so is the football life of John Riggins.
You're going to be a football player when you grow up.
Just doing another resolution and see if we can get some better. If not, it's okay.
Producing the last 10 years. That's all I need.
Fortunately for me, I didn't lose my life, didn't lose my job. Football convinced me that life is a team game.
And every time they say Diesel, I'm gonna take a shot or swig of this habanero hot sauce. We'll have fun with that. Hopefully they don't say Diesel or Rigo.
I always daydreamed about being a mountain man. I wanted to always see the redwoods. I wanted to see the Rocky Mountains. I wanted to see the Painted Desert, the Petrified Forest, the Grand Canyon. That was like the land that I always wanted to go to and just go off into the wilderness and make my way.
The Riggins house was small, but Centralia, Kansas had plenty of open fields for the three boys: Frank, John, and Bill.
Buckets?
Yet
Nope.
it just wasn't big enough
more?
for John.
Oh, okay.
I grew
He
up
got
in
some
style
skill on him. You
13.
see a little.
Everything is barbed wire. Every 160 acres, basically, was surrounded by barbed wire, and inside that was more barbed wire to separate different fields. I think psychologically, I've always felt somewhat maybe imprisoned. And of course, my dad made a good warden, there's no question about that.
Frank Riggins Sr. had few opportunities as a child. The former Marine was determined that his boys
Marine. Okay.
He went by his middle name, Gene, and while he was the toughest on his middle son, John, all three feared him.
He didn't ever really share love with you. More than anything, it was never good enough. You know, you're never good enough at what you're doing in sports.
Frank Jr. was plenty good enough. He was Gene's favorite. Junior set the state record in the 100-yard dash. Starting quarterback at Centralia High.
Damn.
And one of the best pitchers in Kansas.
Kansas. That's cool.
What do you call it, Ed McMahon to Frank's Johnny Carson. He was called Hawkeye was one of his nicknames. The old
What's this
pro.
fucking
Me, I was
music
Fatso.
you're playing, bro?
So there was discrepancy right there too. Fatty, fatso, tubby. I mean, my mom would say it with love, of course, but still, it's not a good self-image. When we were growing up, we'd always race, and Frank had beat me, but he'd only beat me by about a yard. He'd always beat me by a step, and I'm giving up 2 years to him. But the old man never factored that in. He didn't grade on a curve. You're still number 2, Fatso.
Me and him had our issues. I don't even
That's it.
really know what the issues were, but there were. So we just kind of went our separate ways. And that has changed, which I'm really tickled about.
While Junior walked in lockstep with his father, John danced to a different drum. He was more like his mother, Millie.
The hell was that?
He played the sousaphone in the band and loved to run. But he found that even a wide open track was too small for him.
I was like a double wide. I almost needed 2 lanes compared to everybody else was in the race. And they're going, who in the hell is that guy down there running in lane 3? My God, what's he doing here?
By his senior year, John was a muscular 220 pounds. He wasn't Riggo yet, but he wasn't Fatso anymore. He became the pride of Nemaha County and the new state record holder in the 100.
Did you just say Riggo?
When I think about it, it's been so long, but it was kind of nice to see the 9.8 beside Frank's 9.9.
A 100-yard football field suited him best. There was lots of open space, and Junior left an open spot at quarterback.
He was the only guy I ever held out of practice because he ended up hurting too many of his own players. And I remember even getting in an argument with Gene, and Gene would say, Junior's going to make it, Junior's going to go to college, Junior's going to do this, Junior's going to do that. And I said, Gene, Junior is a great high school player. He's going to be a great college player. But John is the one that's going to be playing pro football someday.
Riggins led Centralia to a championship. In his last game, he left no doubt that he was the best player in the family, in all of Kansas.
He rushed for 400 yards, threw for 80 or 90, and he scored 37 points. He was just unbelievable.
John's talents could have taken him far
time.
away to college. Instead, he found himself right next to his father in nearby Lawrence. He'd play for Pepper Rogers at Kansas.
It was that choice that, you can go anywhere you want to, fat boy, but, well, at the University of Kansas. That was the tacit understanding, I think.
Junior was already there.
They were both the same kind
Terrell
of guy.
Revis in
Tough,
2014 played
solid,
for the goddamn
really good
Bucks.
football players. John was just a little bigger.
Kyle Williams. Big Ben
The
was
two played
31.
together for one season. Gene watched them carefully.
Here I was actually accomplishing quite a bit in my own right, and it swept off the table to deal with the fact that Frank wasn't getting his carries. He wasn't getting enough of the spotlight. So, yeah, it wasn't, it was just another, I was just looking forward to having a beer after the game. That's all I wanted.
After Frank graduated, John rushed for over 1,100 yards his senior season.
Ew,
Broke
look at that
nearly
man
all of Gale
move.
Sayers' records.
Gale Sayers.
Finally, John would get to see the country. Riggins was headed for the Big Apple.
Okay. Well, hot sauce.
In 1971, a telegram arrived at the Riggins house from head coach Weeb Eubank. John was the first-round pick of the New York Jets.
Oh, I for the
His
Jets.
afro really stood out to
This
begin
big
with.
ass afro.
And John, when he walked, he had a little bop to him. And besides that, he had the booty out there. So the brothers on the decided, I mean, they just knew that John had a little blood in him, and so they nicknamed him Chocolate Chip.
It didn't take long
Joe
for Joe
Namath
Namath to
openly
learn that
just
John
said
was
that
also
Riggo had a
Chip
booty.
off the old block.
Sitting around in a bar in New York, a tavern, and his dad dipped snuff, and I dipped snuff, and I had a little spit glass. And I'd have my drink here, and I'd be spitting in my glass, and I'm watching his dad. His dad never spit. And I said, what do you do? He swallowed the tobacco. I said, wow, this cat is tough, man, you know? And I just inferred that, you know, this is John's daddy. I see where John got to be a tough guy and to do things his way, too.
In just his second season, Riggins gained nearly 1,000 yards. His size was obvious.
Damn.
His speed, however, kind of snuck up on you.
Damn, you moving. You moving, Arnold.
You're running 65 or 70, which is a good speed.
Oh.
But this big tractor trailer pulls up beside you and just blows by it.
That's a fire-ass
That
name.
was Riggins.
Boozer.
What I didn't have a good set of brakes. So for me to start downshifting that load and making it do, I had a little bit of a wrinkle, but not much. The smaller you get, the more of you I can take. Not that I'm going to shoot.
Damn,
but if you happen to get in my way, then that's the way it's going to go. And I like my
Flattened
running
him.
style. It's kind of like growing up on a farm, not on a
I
farm, but
think I'll do the
cattle
Hobbit
and
with
being around cattle.
Diesel and
You know, there would
Riggo.
always be one or two in the herd that they weren't like the other docile cattle. They were a little aloof. Eventually, though, you had to get them all, you know, into the pen to load them up to take them to another pasture or whatever. You take that one critter out there that was on his own and you started condensing his space, you were going to get that space to where he no longer felt comfortable and it was too tight and he was coming out. He's going to run to daylight, that critter will, and that's all I did. I'd find that spot, and that's kind of what it was like. You squeezed me down enough.
The number 44
then I
is
was gonna have to
fire,
turn
dude. I
and,
fuck
you
with
know,
that number.
make my move. And that's
Hard,
kind of what it was.
man.
In 1973, his third season with the Jets, John made his boldest move.
You know what? I always wanted a mohawk haircut, but my parents would not let me have one.
He
So
looks
I
like
said,
Peanut.
"Hey, I'm going to get myself." So I just started growing it out.
That
was
is
basically kind
fire.
of, okay, folks, there's a new shooter here. And I'm sure, you know, the message was intended for my dad.
Mohawk. Shoved his lineman out of the
by
way.
Frank and overlooked by his father, Riggins now felt ignored because of Namath.
As long as Joe is in town, there'll not be a 1,000-yard rusher because we throw the ball.
I think this is when he gets traded to Washington. I don't think he played for any other teams besides Washington.
His fifth season in New York, John played without a contract and did rush for 1,000 yards.
I realized in that moment that physically speaking, my talents were well beyond Joe's talents. So then I realized that, well, this isn't, what am I doing here? This doesn't make sense because it's always going to be about Joe. And rightfully so. He's the one that made a name for himself, and I liken it to the Westerns. As long as Joe was going to be in town, you know, I was going to have, you know, he was the sheriff and I was the bad guy, and he was kind of figuratively telling me that if you know what's good for you, you'll be on the
Dude,
news
style
stage.
back in the 80s and 70s was weird, man.
Coming up,
Racism.
He gave everything
Racism.
any
Racism.
player could
Racism.
ever give in that particular
I
game.
don't care what anyone
and I
says.
believe that defeat was so
I
crushing
mean, I
to
have a
him
commander shirt on, but
that he walked away.
sweatshirt on, but it's Washington Redskins always. Live.
When I was growing up in Kansas, I was always second fiddle to my older brother Frank. And then when I went to New York, it certainly felt like I was second fiddle to Joe. But then when I came down to Washington, I wasn't even a fiddle.
He was Timothy.
That's because Redskins head coach George Allen pulled the strings. He was a defensive mastermind who thought little of fullbacks.
They had a system basically that was really built around the halfback. I looked and I went, man, a fullback does a lot of blocking here. So in the back of my mind, but I'm thinking, yeah, but I'm Joel Riggins. I mean, I just gained 1,000 yards. Nah, they wouldn't do that. Oh, yes, they would do that. I was actually a damn good blocker in college, and I just kind of, it's something you lose your taste for if you're a running back. It ain't really in your best interest. So anyway, I became a blocking back for George Allen. Period. End of story. There was no ifs, ands, buts, or words about it, and I was not happy.
This is when they played on grass fields, too.
John even went to George Allen one time and said, hey, why don't you give me a 60 number, since I'm going to only get the ball once or twice a game. You know, John was a little frustrated with George Allen.
Understandable. I'd be a little frustrated, too.
Replaced Allen in 1978, and Riggins had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons.
Look at that, just shaking people off of him. Dude, literally, like,
The
looks like, oh,
Reds faced Dallas in the season finale with the division title on the line. Riggins rushed for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Face mask.
He gave everything any player could ever give in that particular game.
Man, can we get a Theismann card?
Handing the ball off up the middle and watching John bear out to the right and run up the sidelines like a 60-yard touchdown run. I mean, the safeties had angles on him, and he outran the
dive.
angles. He was unbelievable in that football game.
Dude should have dove like 10 yards, 20 yards back.
In the final minutes, Roger Staubach threw 2 touchdown passes. The Redskins lost a playoff spot by a single point.
I mean, after that, I was pretty much defeated. And it looked back on it, and there was a lot of things going on, but to me, it was kind of like, well, okay, this is as good as it's going to get.
That defeat was so crushing to him that he walked away. I've got nothing more left in the tank to be able to help this football team win.
He stood out. Racism.
At the age of 30, John Riggins retired. He went back home to Kansas.
He came back, didn't he? I think he came back. I could be wrong. I know he won a Super
Bowl. My position of fullback for the above corporation effective 1:00 p.m. Sunday, July 27th, 1980. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Signed, John Riggins.
He backed out on the day of my birthday.
John Riggins sat out the entire 1980 season. The following year, Joe Gibbs was hired as head coach of the Redskins.
Joe Gibbs.
He went to Kansas to try to convince John to come back.
I meet him at the back door. I've got a Budweiser in each hand. And Joe goes, by the way, this isn't good when you're on a job interview. I would not recommend this to anybody. Meeting the boss with a beer in each hand. But me being me. So, you know, I drank my beer and I drank Joe's, and we sat down and we had breakfast. And then, you know, we discussed a few things.
He leaned across the table and he goes, "You need to get me back there. I'll make you famous." He went just like that, you know. So I'm looking like this. I'm looking at the guy and I go, in my mind, I'm going, oh my gosh, this guy's an egomaniac. I was stuck coaching a nut for 10 years. And honestly, I think in the back of my mind, I said this. I said, I'll get him back. I'll trade him. I get rid of the fruitcake. I'll trade him for a first. This is perfect. And 2 days later, I get a phone call, and it's John. And he goes, Joe, there's only one thing I want put in my contract. And I said, what's that? And he said, a no-trade clause. Now, I tell everybody, somebody up there was looking out after me.
Well, I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back. Guys are, you know, they're just like they've always been. It's almost like I hadn't been gone. And I'm getting kind of tired of just running up and down the field by myself. But, you know, after laying off this long, as that Wild Mountain Man said, and it better be good.
Gibbs unleashed Riggins.
Dude's
He
crazy.
wasn't a beautiful runner. He was a powerful runner. But his power
Give us a John Riggins
was
card in
beautiful
Madden,
to
man.
watch.
I had the perfect angle that every cameraman would die for, to be able to see him go through holes, to see him use his ability, his quickness, his athletic ability. He was just everything you want in a great big running back. You
Shuck
didn't
him.
hit John, John hit you. I can't ever recall somebody putting John on his back. That just wasn't going to happen. No one
Wow.
would take John on because it was all shoulder
Jack
pads,
Youngblood back there,
giant
and that's
thigh
still-
pads
wow.
and knees. And he was a relentless trainer. I mean, yeah, he ran hard off the field, but he was always the last guy running gassers, trying to get, I'm sure, something out of his system and get himself into shape.
As always, John did it his way.
Called and asked, hey, can we work out early tomorrow? And I said, sure, what time? And he said, well, I need to be in a duck blind in Baltimore before the sun comes up. So I said, how about 3:30? And he said, sure. And 3:30 he was there. We had a cup of coffee and turned the music up. And from the beginning to the end, he just went at it and went duck hunting.
After practice, Riggo would herd his offensive linemen into the Redskins' equipment shed.
5 o'clock club was a means for the select few to get together, solve a lot of
I wish I could
world's
show that.
problems over a couple of 12-ounce curls.
But I don't care.
We even had a president.
Jeff
It was
Bostic.
self-anointed. It was John. He called
He's
himself
part of the
El
Hall.
Presidente.
Yeah, it was self-appointed. I was self-appointed with no elections. I fancied myself as that guy, you know. I was the one that kind of, what do you call it, needled everybody. But it was always about fun and games. It wasn't we were in there, you know, mapping out strategies of what we were going to do on Sunday. It was a social hour.
John's the character of the characters that were a part of that football team.
I've been a bad boy.
He's the lead act.
Riggins, John, knucklehead.
That's
John
funny
wasn't
as
afraid
shit.
to buck the establishment. John wasn't afraid to do something out of the
No,
ordinary.
I haven't seen Riggo yet.
If the band was playing, John had his own drums that he was beating on.
I do have a drinking problem, but that's only when I'm hanging from the rafters by my knees.
I think that the biggest misconception is that he is a clown, and he's not a clown. He's a showman instead, and he knows intuitively the right thing to do, and yet do it in a colorful way.
Football was never my life. Interesting. The guys, the relationships were my life. I have an ability to be able to relate to damn near everybody, and I've sat beside a sitting president at dinner and, you know, been around vice presidents and been around vice presidents who became presidents. And at the same time, you know, used to hang out with the equipment guys. I can take on all comers, basically.
Oh, this is Riggo. I heard him say Riggo. I'm gonna take a hit of this jalapeno.
There wasn't any that there was anything foreboding about my intentions that I had altered. It was always pure, and it was always in the vein of having fun and making them laugh. So I think that's why it works that way, and that's what I do. That's how I give back.
The fans loved him right back. And in 1982, Riggo gave them everything he had.
That was a counter tray. Gibbs invented that, actually. Nice little fun fact for you guys. It's counter tray. Supposed to have the lineman hit up towards the
non-winning years in New York.
it's where your fullback guard, if guard,
in 1979.
the guard and tackle for your fullback's supposed to block the down tackle, replace the guard, and it's a kick wrap and give it to the running back afterwards.
Getting the
Jab step, go.
opportunity. The only thing I've really ever wanted outside of getting a paycheck.
It's a really effective
this is
play.
what
I
you
like
play
it.
for.
It's
An
favorite play.
opportunity to get to the Super Bowl.
Riggins had never started in a playoff game before, so he did something he'd never done before. He went to Gibbs and said, "Load the wagon. Give me the ball."
You didn't hear from John Riggins, oh, give me the ball, I can make a difference. When John made a statement like that, you know, it's like, oh, let's all sit up in our chairs a little bit and listen, because that means that he's ready to go. Yeah, give him the football.
He went to Joe Gibbs and said, Coach, I want to carry the ball.
Boom, we fly off the ball. Get into your guy and get him turned a little bit and out of the way, because when Rigo was coming through, he'd take all three of you.
Man. Gronk in 2014
In the
top
first
100.
round of the playoffs, the
That's a
Diesel ran
horsepower.
for 119 yards. Then
The fact
topped
that
that
they didn't
total
care,
the next week
which I like.
against the Vikings.
When everybody else on that playing field is growing weary,
Levante
that's
David?
when Riggins really kills you. That is, once he
Dude,
gets
how
full of
old is this motherfucker?
better jump on him and wait
I
till
gotta look at his
he's
age.
gonna go for a
Look
little
at my
ride.
phone.
Riggins' final stats that day: 37 carries, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 memorable bow.
So I'm coming off the field, the crowd, there's just this crescendo as it gets louder and louder. And all I could, I just stopped and I thought, well, I should acknowledge this. So I took my helmet off and, and I crossed my arms and I bowed. But it was just that spontaneous moment. It felt like the right thing to do.
He gets a big hand and he makes a big bow. A little showbiz.
So this guy still plays today.
An earlier loss
Dude's
to the
30.
Cowboys had made Riggins quit the game. 3 years later, faced them again.
Turn this a little bit. There we go.
This time, a trip to Super Bowl 17 was at stake.
Oh, wow. I just want to see how much time we got.
The Diesel rumbled for 140 yards and totaled a record 610 in the 82 postseason.
After this game, we're going to cut it here, and we'll watch the rest in the next video. Oh, perfect.
He's happy, he's jolly, he's by golly. Here's Brother Ringo, he's with us tonight.
We got to the Super Bowl,
but
Junior and I, or Frank and I, were together with John, and it was just a moment of knowing that he got to the place he wanted to be.
I wouldn't.
Thanks for watching.
I wouldn't say.
Each and every one of you, y'all have a great day.
Because I'm a running back. What was going to happen on Sunday afternoon?